Veronica, because that's the game I wish that this fucking game was, and I'll just say that right now. Let's go ahead and let's start us off, guys, with graphics. And you know what? I'm going to let Force start. Force.
I would say that graphic-wise, it's the same Resident Evil that we've been playing for the last few years. There's really nothing next-gen about the graphics at all. Really no high polish like I've seen on some of the Wii games. It looks like it was the PlayStation 2, / Resident Evil 4 engine that we've been playing for, several years. There really was no new tech behind it. With that being said, I don't think the engine was ever really that bad. I think it does an okay job for what it wants to do, and I enjoyed the previous Resident Evil games. I never stopped playing them because of graphics. I'm sad that it's not more next-gen, but I'm not disappointed with what I got. Do we want to just pop up our scores now?
All the scores are on the same slate, so, let me talk a little bit about graphics. Yes, Force is absolutely right, you guys. This does run on the Resident Evil 4 engine. But, whether or not that's okay, I guess is to each, to each has their own opinion. I personally think that let's think about this, guys. When did this fucking game come out for the GameCube? Like 2001? I don't know. It seems like it was that long ago. No, 2000.
It's closer to like 3 or 4 years.
2003. So it's been like 3 years. The engine is tired. That's the thing. And Force is right. It's not a next generation game. Obviously, it reuses the same engine in a different way, and it does try to achieve something a little bit different than what we saw in Resident Evil 4, than what we got in Code Veronica, the games before that, et cetera, et cetera. I was not impressed with the graphics at all. In fact, while you do see a lot of the same models, zombies, the stalkers, you get the dogs, you get, the little creepy fucking leech things that you got, nothing ever made me go, oh, that's neat, or oh, that's, I'm being blown away. And so, quite frankly, I think the graphics are completely lackluster, and there's some major flaws in the gameplay that are produced because of the graphics. For example, and I really like what one of the users said. Those leeches, they pop up on your face, from a point of view screen.
Sadly.
But somehow I'm aiming my gun here to shoot them off of my face. It just doesn't make any sense. And you just experience the same monsters over and over. I didn't feel like I was getting anything new outside of what other Resident Evil games have already brought me. They just made it a light gun game. What do you think about the graphics?
I think that you guys are being way too kind, and that it looks worse than Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube. And it's not only sad because, it's on a next-gen platform called the Wii, but it's also because the game doesn't even do much to begin with. It's an on-rails shooter. You're not, the developers don't have to put memory or resources into you moving around. They're moving around for you. So really, they should have spent more time maybe making the graphics better or making the environment better. I thought everything was completely dull. I thought it was brown and gray.
You could definitely see in this clip.
There was no color, there was no pop. It was just a disgusting landscape to be in.
Which actually, Resident Evil 4 engine wasn't that bad in terms of color. Mm-hmm. It still had that gray.
It felt like it was almost Manhunt 2-ish with like a mask over it. It felt like it was just always grainy, or it didn't have any, I don't know what it is. It just didn't have anything that defined. Like there weren't any objects that were clearly defined. It was all very muddy, and it was just gross. I hated it. I absolutely hated it, and Capcom should be ashamed for releasing it.
Let's look at our graphical slate right now, you guys, and compare these graphical scores. Throw that up there right now. And here you can see, even Force didn't go too much higher than, what I went. I'm sort of right in the middle. I put a 6 down. Force put a 7, which I'm
but if we have a
potentially
potentially 4-year-old looking engine, and that's just uncalled for.
Well,
I don't know.
But the engine isn't the game. I don't think the game suffers because of it.
I think it does.
I think the engine does its job, and I also like the fact that we get to see stuff that we've seen throughout the series in 3D, and that one, the nostalgia factor kind of.
It's still a depressing, boring environment.
Code Veronica did that on the Dreamcast. They took us back
it's
to
crazy,
the
guys. You need to know something too. That this game looks way better on standard definition. We shouldn't be saying that about a next-gen machine, but
There
I couldn't
you
believe how
go.
much better
There
it
you go.
looked on my
That's a
regular
7.
TV.
Looks better on standard def.
While Force, that may be a suggestion to people who are going to buy and play this game. To me, that's making a mockery of video games, really, or anything. That would be like, hey, Mike, I want you to watch this movie, but you can't watch it on your Blu-ray player because then you're going to see how shitty it actually is. You've got to watch it on this 8th generation VHS that I've just dubbed the
preview
movie
monitor.
over and over for you. So, it gives it that shitty look to it. I mean, overall, I don't think our graphic scores are really that far apart. That's pretty much where I would have guessed we would have all been, pretty much. So let's move on to sound. And I'll start off with this. For sound, this is probably the one area that the game excels in. And that's not really saying a lot. Yes, it does have voice acting, and it's got some constant voice acting as the story does sort of unfold as you're on this on-rail shooter. The voice acting in Resident Evil has never been anything to call home to mom about. In fact, I still remember the days of Resident Evil 1. It's like, where's Barry? He's... it was just so unnatural.
Single
and
take.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
So, I almost expect a sort of a cheesy B-movie voice acting attempt by Resident Evil, but this is actually decent. All the characters, some of them did return. I do believe that, what the hell is her name, the little girly girl that you play
Rebecca.
as? What? Rebecca.
Rebecca.
So, I'm pretty sure she's the same chick that has been doing it for like 3 games. I
know Wesker's the same too.
And Wesker is the same. So for that, I really have to give him some props. The problem is that we all know that the Wii doesn't have an immense sound processing system. It does simulated Dolby Pro Logic 2. So it didn't really like.
hell does that
You
even
mean this
sound
one's
like?
not mono?
You played it in a surround setting, but I really didn't get the feeling that sound was adding too much to my experience. How did it work for you? Playing it in like a natural 5.1 surround setting.
Was that question directed towards me?
Yeah, it was, because we played it here on this TV. So, don't forget that you got sounds that come out of your remote that sound like shit, for one thing. Like, but then you got your TV sounds. What I'm asking you for is that, did you feel like the game went out of its way to try to make use of sound to maybe make the environment that you're in more scary or add more suspense to the game?
They do a couple good things with sound in that it kind of comes from the gameplay and the fact that you're not constantly shoot and sit. There'll be times where you're just walking for a while, and the sound does a good job of like building up the anticipation of what's going to come next.
Yeah.
And I also like the fact that they kept most of the cast.
Right.
You guys laugh at that, but always remember that this is a Resident Evil game.
No, we were
this is
laughing
an
at the fact
on-rail
where you're
shooter.
like, sometimes we walk around for a while. It's like, no. Sometimes the game just fucking controls
Sometimes
you
you
and
get to
doesn't let
shoot
you
for a
do
while.
shit.
Sometimes
That's
you get to
how
shoot.
I saw it. But, I don't know. Like, I enjoy, like, well, we'll get to this. I was
Yeah.
just going to say, like, I've played a fuckload of House of the Deads, and, like, I almost would prefer to just, it's like, play those. But anyway, let's look at our sound scores.
It was just average for me. I don't really care.
7 and 7 for me and 4, 6 for Suma. Pretty average all across the board. Let's move on into gameplay. Now, guys, real simple, just explaining to you. It's an on-rail shooter. So you never move. Actually, you do have the ability to sort of look around like this. But imagine if
What
you
year
were
is
wearing
this?
like
What year
a
is
neck brace like this, or maybe one of those cones that a dog
dog
wears,
cone?
and you've got like limited neck movement. So basically, the game is controlling your feet because, Capcom thinks you're too fucking stupid to do that yourself. And then you've got this little limited area to look around in, all right? So then you've got your reticle right here, and you basically, just like any other shooting game, you fire at your enemies and whatnot, and you reload in certain ways. Now, here's another thing that's going to come out during this review is that Force has the Wii Zapper.
Oh.
And I've actually read that the Wii Zapper is offering a lot more in terms of gameplay. We, on the other hand, had to use vanilla Wiimote and Nunchuck. So Force,
probably
tell
what
us,
most people have.
Which is probably what most people have. So before we skew anyone's perspective, Force, tell us what the experience is like from a Wii Zapper perspective.
You guys put me in a bad spot because, you know, I played with a buddy and I actually preferred the Wii Remote and Nunchuck and let my partner use the Wii Zapper. I really like the Wii Zapper, but, you know, in the long run, it felt more comfortable using my Wii Remote because I'm used to it. And it's a lot more difficult to look around when you're using the Wii Zapper because having that analog stick right by where you're holding the gun cramps your arms.